Sports betting is everywhere. TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, TV. If you've consumed any form of sports media over the last week, chances are you've run into some sort of sports betting advertisement. You've likely seen Kevin Hart promoting DraftKings or Rob Gronkowski promoting FanDuel. Even Jamie Foxx and Vanessa Hudgens have commercials endorsing BetMGM. If you've attended or tuned into an NFL, NHL, or NBA game, you've likely seen an ad for these services. Colleges have brand deals with sportsbooks, professional sports teams, leagues, and players have deals with sportsbooks, and what's happening is not a coincidence. This is a planned effort to get you and me addicted to sports betting. It's no shock to see the sports betting industry exploding in growth after its legalization, but it's a bit shocking to see how much sports betting advertisements have been intertwined with our lives. So how did we get here? Why are we here? And what can be done about this? Well, let's take a trip back to the mystical year of 2018. In 2018, TikTok just became the most downloaded app in the United States. Kanye West and Kim Kardashian visited the White House. And me, well, I met an elephant for the first time, so yeah, it was a pretty crazy year. But what was likely the craziest thing to happen in 2018 was the US legalized sports betting. Before then, Nevada was the only state to offer any kind of legal sports betting in the United States. And now, in just 5 years, 35 states have legalized some form of sports betting. Now, I asked you guys if you thought that sports betting had a negative impact on individuals and society, and you all overwhelmingly said yes. But we have to address there are several advantages. First, it generates increased revenue for governments. Second, it enables effective consumer regulation. And third, it stimulates economic growth via job creation through the establishment of sportsbooks and related businesses. These benefits make the legalization of sports betting an appealing choice for many people. In fact, 63% of Americans think that legal sports betting should be available everywhere in the United States. So what's the problem? Well, where I and many others have issues with this is how far these sportsbooks have captured our lives from a media consumption perspective. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. If you're an NFL fan, you cannot attend a game or watch one on television without gambling advertisements. It's insane. If you're mildly interested in sports, you cannot escape gambling advertisements. In the US, DraftKings and FanDuel spend more on advertising than the entire beer industry. In fact, the cost of television ads for online gambling and gambling services jumped over $500 million over the last couple years. To put all of this into context, gambling companies now spend 3 times as much on ads as cereal companies do. Sports United, a major advertising authority in the industry, stated gambling once constituted for 2.3% of NFL's sponsorship dollars and now constitutes for over 3 times that. I mean, it's everywhere. The home stadium for the New Orleans Saints is now called the Caesars Superdome, after one of the largest sports books in the nation. I mean, is this not a bit weird? Not just adults watch professional sports, but children and teenagers do too. The NFL recently has made a massive effort to get kids to watch more NFL games, partnering with Nickelodeon and even Pixar and Toy Story. Now, I'm sure these kids watching these games are not being directly shown any gambling ads or promotions. But what happens when a kid goes to one of these football games, or just watches one with their family? Hey Dad, what's a FanDuel? Hey Mom, what's a same game parlay? Hey Uncle Rick, is it true if I spend $5 with DraftKings, I can get $200 back in free bets? Sounds like easy money. And now almost every single team in the NFL has some sort of sports betting, casino, or daily fantasy sponsorship. And the NFL really doesn't care, or they pretend that they do, but really don't. The NFL has become the National Council on Problem Gambling's largest donor, committing $6.2 million over the next 3 years. But is it enough? They're basically putting a band-aid on the issue, not really addressing the matter at hand. But what really shocks me the most is this is occurring at a collegiate level too. 5 major colleges, Michigan State, LSU, Maryland, University of Denver, and the University of Colorado, have announced multi-year partnerships with sports betting companies that include placing ads at games. In 2020, the University of Colorado Boulder, for example, accepted $1.6 million to promote sports gambling on their campus. A betting company sweetened the deal by offering an extra $30 to the school for every time someone downloaded the company's app and used one of the referral codes to place a bet. What the f? Could you imagine if a tobacco company had a deal like this? Oh, every vape a student buys will give the university $10. This might be the most unethical thing ever. Colleges are preying on young people. Per the New York Times, this advertisement promoting gambling went to LSU's students, and mistakenly, according to the university, to some students that were underage. Yeah, let's give college students student loan debt and a gambling addiction. It just seems to me the whole industry is trying to indoctrinate young people to become gambling addicts. What's crazy about all of this is 58% of US adults agree that sports betting should not be widely advertised, and 71% agree that sports organizations should not partner with sports betting companies. And yet, over the last 5 years, the industry has done the complete opposite. Most people agree sports betting should be legal, but like with tobacco products, there should be stricter rules with how these brands advertise. But it seems like with sports betting, there are no rules. And this isn't just a US issue. Australians lose more money gambling on sports per capita than any country in the world. Australians love to gamble. It's often said that if they could, they would bet on 2 flies crawling up a wall. With so much betting in Australia, Australians are swarmed with gambling ads and promotions too. In fact, there's 5 times as many TV ads for gambling as there are alcohol ads. It's so bad over there, certain members of their government are trying to push for more legislation against these gambling companies. So while Australia is doing this, the US is doing the complete opposite. And this issue extends past traditional media. This also affects YouTube and content creators. There are many content creators that have sponsorships with these brands. And I mean, I get it. You gotta get that bag. But I feel like, again, it's a bit too much. For example, let's talk about fantasy sports. Many content creators that cover fantasy sports are also sponsored by companies like DraftKings or FanDuel or even Sleeper. My issue with this is that a lot of fantasy sports players are young. Very young. According to a 2021 survey, over 70% of US respondents between the ages of 18 and 39 said they played fantasy sports. I couldn't find any specific stats on how many people under 18 play fantasy sports, but I know in my case, I started playing when I was like 14. And soon after, I was in multiple leagues when I was 16, and so were all of my friends. Countless teenagers are likely going to YouTube or TikTok, watching videos on fantasy sports, and then being advertised these gambling apps. Here's one of my favorite examples. On the Sleeper app, which is a fantasy sports app, so no, it's not advertised as a gambling app, it's advertised as a sports and fantasy app, you literally log in, there's a tab designated for sports prop betting. So if you're 15 or 16 and want to join a fantasy league, you're being directly exposed to sports gambling. At this point, you could argue fantasy sports is a gateway drug to sports betting. I mean, these things are fully integrated with each other, and I think that that's wrong. On top of all of this, there are many issues with how sports betting has directly impacted social media and how we interact culturally. If players don't perform well, they may get death threats. I mean, this is nothing new. This has definitely existed forever in sports, but there's no denying that with the rise of legal sports betting, so is the rise of toxic behavior towards these players online. And obviously we have to address the addiction perspective. Yes, too much of anything is bad. I'm not going to morally grandstand anyone who sports bets. To be completely honest and fully transparent like I always am, I partake in sports betting. I partake in the activity from time to time, but by no means does it consume my life. But again, I'm not one of those people that have that addictive personality. Addiction is a real thing, and that's something that we have to be honest about. Like with alcohol and smoking, too much sports betting can ruin people's lives. So what's the solution? Well, sports betting is here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere, but to me, there needs to be more separation. Sports books and brands that allow people to gamble should not be fully integrated into our media. How these brands are advertising their products is exceptionally dangerous. Advertising at college campuses, preying on the youth, whether it's through ads on NFL games or integrated gambling on fantasy apps, is a recipe for disaster. I don't think teams or collegiate organizations should be allowed to be sponsored by these brands. I also think the NFL or any sports organization should limit their advertiser funding from these brands. And if they're going to integrate things, again, limit them. I have seen Kevin Hart's DraftKings ads more than I've seen Kevin Hart's movies. It is too damn much. Now, hopefully this video shines some light on this complex and yet frustrating situation. Of course, what's your opinion on this? I'd love to know. If you're new here, check out this video on why YouTube has an ad problem. I will see you next time.